Welcome to the first episode of Settling is Not an Option. I'm your host, Adam Nebbs, and joining me today is my co-host, Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels they've settled for a life that they aren't completely happy with, whether that's in the relationship you're in, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself. We're here to tell you that settling is not an option. We are just two people who have done just that and want you to know that you're not alone and that we're here to give you some guidance around how to stop settling in your life and what you're likely to encounter along the way. We'll tell you our stories, what we've learned from our journey, and hear from some interesting guests who can also share their wisdom. Welcome to the show, and we hope you get something out of it. In our first episode, we'll get to know Amanda and her story. Amanda and I met on LinkedIn on the 5th of April, 2020. I did a little bit of internet stalking of her website, The Expectation Gaps, and we started talking from there. Ultimately, the reason we connected is we were very much on the same journey. Amanda had started this years before and was able to give me some advice around what I was likely to encounter and the things that I should look out for. And over time, we really realized how aligned we were in our thinking. So welcome, Amanda. We'll jump right in and I'll ask you a question. Can you tell us where it all started for you? What was that defining moment where you decided that you weren't going to settle for a life that wasn't fully realized?
Sure. Well, I think that's a hard thing for people to figure out, really, because there's not any one moment. I think it's a combination of tons of little moments that all of a sudden they get so big when you put them all together that all of a sudden you can't deny anymore that you need to make a change. But with that being said, I think what the catalyst that started it all for me was when I separated from my ex-husband. Because what happened with that is, just to give a little backstory, we had been together for almost 20 years at that point. I had been with him since I was 14. You know, I had no other romantic experience. I had no other life experience. My whole adult life had been spent with him. My whole identity was wrapped up in him. So at any rate, as you can imagine, when we separated, I was a complete mess. I mean, my life just kind of fell apart. If I wouldn't have had a good support system, it really would have fell apart. But what happened then, you know, besides just all the dynamics that go along with the breakup and the end of a marriage, you know, I lost my identity. I felt like a complete failure, and I felt embarrassed and even just afraid to look people in the eye because I didn't want to see that pity in their eye. And so that was a pretty big shift in my life. I mean, there's no way it couldn't have been. So I kind of just decided at that point that I was going to embrace that experience as much as I could and take it. What happened had happened. I couldn't change it. I was going to try to take that experience and just get better from it. So that is really what started and kind of woke me up, because before that, I was just kind of checking off boxes in my life. You know, I graduated from high school, and then my ex-husband and I moved in together right after high school. Went to college. Then graduated from college, got married, bought a house, had a baby. You know, it's like we checked off all these boxes, and on the surface, and had a great job that I liked. It was making decent money. So, you know, it seems like I've checked off all the right boxes, and I'm kind of just going along that path, almost a zombie. You're just checking off the boxes and doing what you think you're supposed to do. And so that, anyways, when we separated, then that was a real awakening for me, because I had to really rethink everything about my life. And so then it just started. It took me from that point, it took me another 9 years, though. So this is a point I want to get across to people too, is that it's a long process. So be patient with yourself, and don't expect that you're going to be able to make these kind of decisions overnight, because it took me altogether probably a good 20 years. But from the point that we separated to the point that I actually quit my career as a CPA and started the expectation gaps, which is, I would say, when I truly stopped settling for good enough, is, that was another 9 years. So there were a lot of other things that happened in that time too that propelled me toward that, where, finally, like I said, it wasn't even an option, or like the name of the show here suggests, it wasn't even an option at that point. I just felt like I absolutely had to make a change in my life or I was going to go insane. So that was pretty much it.
I think, yeah, like I see a lot of similarities in my story as well. It's that idea of checking boxes, really.
Right.
So obviously that's a momentous shift, going from a 20-year relationship. Did you find a lot of your identity was built in Amanda, the wife, Amanda, the CPA,
Yes.
the mom who owns the house?
Yes, 100%. And I didn't even realize that until after. So then what happened was, of course, I was after we separated, and I moved out of our marital home, and that was a huge step. And that's kind of a new beginning too, and that's a whole other topic, but sometimes you have to have a whole new beginning. So left the marital home and moved into my own place, and really then I could start connecting with myself again. And along the way, I ended up meeting my current husband, and then that's when it really started. I don't know, all of it came together. Things started to fall in place for me, and I started to realize who I was. Like, these parts of me started, I think because I was introducing myself to him too, that it started awakening these parts in me that had just been silent for so long, and I didn't even remember were there. And so yes, that was a huge part of me, like I said, awakening again to who I really am and what I really wanted to do with my life. Because you're right, my whole identity had been wrapped up in that. And I will add too, just for other people out there who might be dealing with the same thing, and not to dwell on it too much, but so my ex-husband battled with depression and things, and so I always was trying to take on the role of fixing him, and that did not work out so well, as you can imagine. And so that's another thing. I think a lot of people get stuck settling because they think, and I felt that was my job as a good wife. I thought that's what a good wife was supposed to do. And not that necessarily fix, but help someone along, help them see the good in themselves, and blah blah blah. And so I really thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. And along the way, you end up settling. Whenever you're trying to take care of someone else and putting their needs before your own, that's another way that you end up finding that you're settling.
I love that. And I think it's really nice as well that, you were introducing yourself to your now husband, and that's when you woke up and said, oh, this is who I am. I haven't seen this person before.
Right.
So it was, right. It was a double introduction in a way of speaking.
That's true.
So just kind of going back, I suppose, because it is such a huge component of your life. So over that 20 years, did you find that it was a gradual process of going, okay, well, once I get the house, I'll be happy. Once I get married, I'll be happy. Once I've had a child, I'll be happy. And that you kept arriving at that point and finding that you weren't? Can you talk us a bit through that kind of journey?
Yes. So yeah, that was definitely a component of it. And you always, and I guess part of it is just at that age too, you always are working towards something. And then you kind of get to the age, and I guess for me, it happened in my early 30s, where you've got everything you've been working for. Because of course, when you're young, you are working through school, you're working on getting a career, you're working on all these things. And then all of a sudden you have it all, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? What am I supposed to do next? And so part of it, I think, is just age comes into play, but definitely I did feel that, yeah, that was going to make me happy. And not only that, as I alluded to, I thought each of these things, if I did them, they would make him happy. And so I thought, I was trying to create this life that just was not working out for either one of us in the long run. And so, yeah, definitely, that was definitely a big part of it, though, like you say. And I think so many people get stuck in that trap of thinking, if I only do this, I'll be happy. If I only do that, I'll be happy. When really all it takes is sitting down with yourself in a room and listening to your own thoughts and then following through on your own thoughts. That's what's going to make you happy. And that's really the only thing that's going to make you happy.
I think that's very true, and it's relationships at the best of times. They're not easy things, and I
No.
think so many people out there could probably find a lot of similarities in their stories in which you are trying to make somebody else happy, and you feel that if you can do that, you're fulfilling the role of the good wife. I've
Right.
fixed this person, but along the way you're slowly losing sight of who you are, and that then creates its own problems, I suppose. So no,
Exactly.
thank you for sharing. That's
No,
really important.
absolutely. No, that's a huge part of it. And I feel like a lot of people deal with that and maybe don't even realize that they're dealing with it, because I didn't necessarily realize it either when I was doing it.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's huge just to have that self awareness so that you realize when you've lost sight of yourself in any relationship, because it doesn't have to be romantic either. It could be a work relationship for sure. It could be a relationship with a friend, a relationship with maybe you're taking care of an aging parent, even maybe taking care of your own kids. You can lose your own identity trying to take care of someone else and trying to make them happy. And that ultimately, it's just not your job. We like to think that it is. And it sounds really altruistic to think that, oh, I'm going to make everybody happy. That's all I want to do is make everyone happy. But at the end of the day, you don't end up making anybody happy that way. The best way to make someone else happy, if they truly care about you, they're going to be happy if you're happy. And so that's really taking care of yourself is the best way to make other people around you happy as well.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the point that you made about not realizing at the time is just a really important one. So listening to A New Earth, so obviously the book that I bang on about on LinkedIn all the time, Amanda's seen many of these posts, from Eckhart Tolle, he talks about the place of the elderly in society and how our society is so based on doing. We just do, we don't be. And being is that state where we can sit there and think, all right, let me look at my life. Let me look at what I'm doing. Am I happy? Is this what I want to be doing? But because we're so caught up in the doing, it's not until after where we sit and be with ourselves for a bit that we go, actually, that wasn't right. I was losing myself there. I can certainly find a lot of correlations between what you're saying there and my story, which I'll leave that until next week. Otherwise, I'll get
right. I know, that's why I keep thinking about asking you questions, and I'm like, no, I need to wait.
It's tricky. It's really tricky, but yeah. So moving, I suppose, from that moment,
Sure.
and obviously, as you said, it was, a 9-year journey really to start to go, who am I? What do I want to look at doing in my life?
Yep.
Tell us about some of the challenges you had along the way, because
Sure.
I think what can happen in society is too often we can look at, not to bag out Disney, love Disney, but that very, the hero goes from that sad point to the end point. Yay, I've married the princess.
Right.
I'm happy. Tell us about, what happened in between and the struggles you had.
Yeah, so there were a lot. So that was another reason, probably, like I said, it's a combination of all these events. But so in that 9-year time frame, first I started a new relationship with my husband. We ended up moving in together. So I ended up moving like 3 times within a year and a half. And then we got married. So then I took on him, and then I added 2 other children to my life. So I had my stepchildren who are with us pretty much 100% of the time. And so that was a huge adjustment. And then after that, I ended up changing firms. I was a CPA. And so I ended up, and I don't know what that's called in Australia, but It's a
I think it's
certified
CPA
public
as well.
accountant.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's called something else, but a professional accountant. Anyway, ended up changing firms. I had been at the one firm for almost 13 years, I think, and went to like a completely like the client base was completely different, the atmosphere was completely different, everything, the philosophy, everything was completely different. So went to this different firm, and what else happened? Oh, my husband got cancer, so we dealt with that for a year, and so all these things. So then, and plus, like, the kids are pretty young through that time, and so anyways, all this crazy stuff's going on, and a lot of it was good, but it's still a lot of life changes and a lot of things that make you really have to question your priorities and make you have to really examine your life and, of course, your expectations, as the expectation gaps would say. And eventually what happened was I got back to that same point, though. So I went through all these changes, and then I got to the point again where I'm like, okay, I have the house. I don't know why I said house first. That's not the most important, but I have the husband. I have the kids. I have the house. I have the job. I have the money. It's like I have everything. And here I am feeling unsettled again. What's going on? Why can't I be happy with this? And I would like try to force myself to relax. Like, I'm like, okay, I have everything. I don't need to work toward anything else. I could just Netflix and chill like everybody else. You know, why can't I just go sit on the beach and do nothing all day? And so I would actually try to force myself to do that. And I can't, I'm just not a relaxing kind of person. I like to keep busy. So that didn't work out. So anyways, the funny thing is, though, that I ended up in the exact same point I had ended up at the end of my first marriage, where I'm questioning, how, now what do I do? And something, what really happened, though, I think that made me actually quit the CPA life is I didn't want to go to another firm. Like, that, if I was going to be a CPA, I was staying there. I wasn't switching firms again. And for a long time, I really enjoyed working there. But I never shared values with the partners, the owners of the firm. I never shared their values. I never really shared their philosophy on work. And over time, that started to become more and more obvious to me. And it got to the point where I didn't hate being there. And I liked the work I was doing. I liked my clients, but it got to the point where I just couldn't be in that environment anymore, because I really felt like it was, to be around people that didn't share my values was draining me. And that's what I finally figured out. Like, that was really draining my soul, or however you want to say it, where I was ending up feeling like I was losing myself again. So that's another huge thing I think people need to focus on as they stop settling, is to really focus on who you're surrounding yourself with and make sure those people are sharing your values. Not that they have to share every single value you have, but they should at least respect your values and be able to relate to your values on some level, and your values should at least mesh somehow. That, I think, when I reflect on it, that ended up being the final straw for me that made me say, all right, I'm done with this CPA life.
And that's huge because, you know, and I think that's something we definitely need to talk through. So, as far as I know, at least in Australia, and I imagine it's the same in the States, is a CPA is on a good wicket. You know, you build your client base, you get a reputation. I suppose it depends which CPA you're working for.
Sure.
But, you know, how did you break that, especially at the time if, you know, you had familial obligations, you had, you know, mortgage, as we all do.
Yep.
Like, how did you, like, I suppose, put values above money?
Yeah, well, luckily,
it's a difficult thing.
I was in a, it's definitely difficult. And luckily, I was in and I guess that's the other point, too, is you have to keep your eyes open to opportunities and recognize when the time's right. Because I don't think I could have done what I did any earlier than when I did it. Like, I wouldn't say, oh, I should have done that so much sooner, because I couldn't have. I wouldn't have been prepared to. But what it was is the kids are older. So when our youngest at that point would have been 11. Yeah. So our youngest is 11. So the kids are to the age where they don't need to be taken care of on the same level. as a young child does. So that helped me free up my thinking and just free up my time. My husband was cancer free, and the timing worked out well money wise. Obviously I'm not gonna say how much I was making, but I was making more money than I needed to live on, luckily, or very fortunately. So I had quite a bit saved up. Plus, I made this decision in November, which here in the States is right before our tax season, because our tax season runs from January through April. And so what I knew it going into tax season that was going to be my last tax season. And so, and that's also the time we make most of our money, maybe like 60%, or probably more like 70% of our money is made during that time. So I was just socking away all that money that I was making during that time, knowing, and I ended up where I had a 9-month cushion. I gave myself 9 months and said, okay, I got 9 months to just work on expectation gaps full time and see what happens. And then I did end up, so I am doing accounting work again now, just on my own. And luckily for me, some of my clients were very willing to come back to me, and others have tracked me down. And I did get to the point where the money was starting to run low. And I needed to do accounting work again. But now even that is not burdensome, or it's not something that I dread doing, because I'm doing it on my own terms. I can still put the expectation gaps first if I need to, or I can balance the two, and I can figure out that balance myself. So that, I think the money part is a huge component though, because people really, if they're going to take some huge leap of faith, where I would never tell someone just quit your job today and just see how it goes. Although some people do have that risk tolerance where they could probably do that. But I do think having a financial plan in place is a huge part of that equation, because it's also what I found, not only just so you can live, obviously, but I also found I was starting to make not necessarily bad decisions, but decisions I didn't want to make for the expectation gaps, because I was trying to make money from it. And I didn't want to put that pressure on. I wanted that to grow the way that I wanted it to grow. And I didn't want to have to make those decisions just so I could make money. So it also helped free myself up, just so I could have, carry through on the mission that I saw for the expectation gaps, instead of having to focus on money.
I think there were 2 points in there which I really, really like. And I think it's an important one, is that anyone who's sitting out there at the moment who's on the fence thinking, yeah, I am unhappy in what I'm doing, this is conflicting with my values, but thinking I'm not sure if I'm in the position to jump yet, because I'm on a good wicket, is realizing when the right time is, as you said. So I think there was a really good point you said there around I was earning more money than I needed, and it's when we can actually look at that and say, how much do we really need to live, and society would love to say, well, you need to be on the kind of money that Mark Zuckerberg's on, really, to live happily.
Right.
But then, I think you get to that point and you're probably still not happy, because, when is it enough? So I think it's going, okay, I know that I'm on more than I need to be, but just making that point of make a plan, sit and think about when is the right time for me, so that, you get out of settling, but you don't put yourself under a lot of duress, because I think you're going to need that kind of buffer in those early stages.
100%.
And the second point was, and I thought that was such a good one, is around how the expectation gaps started to change based on you trying to make money from it.
Right.
I think that's such an interesting thing that we slip into. So can you talk us around, how did it change? Was it the content was trying to be tailored towards money? Can you take us through that a bit more?
I think it was more, and I don't know that I even actually made any firm decisions on anything that were focused on money. However, for one thing, my goal with Expectation Gaps is it's a nonprofit organization, and I want it to remain ad-free. mainly the main reason I want to ad free, all my content to be ad free, is because it's focused on helping people become deliberate thinkers. And I don't think that you can become a deliberate thinker when you have advertisements popping up in your face every 5 seconds. And plus, there's other reasons, there's other social reasons and things that I don't want to have advertisers on my site, or at least not advertisers that I am comfortable with. So, at any rate, now I lost my train of thought on that.
That's okay. I was before too, so I hope whoever's watching can see the cogs turning in our head.
Right. So, at any rate, so I don't think I actually ended up making any changes that were focused around money, but I was getting to the point where I was so focused on how am I going to make money? What do I need to change about my marketing? What other avenues can I find to market to people and all these things, that it was shutting off the creative juices, or whatever you want to say, that I needed to create the content. And it was also starting to silence that passion of mine that I have that got me going toward to create the expectation gaps to begin with, which was to help people kind of stop settling. I mean, that's part of what the expectation gaps does too, but in a different way. But, my passion with that is to, like I said, help people become deliberate thinkers so that they can start living the way that they want to live. And I started losing focus of that. And you do start, because you start, even titles of your articles or whatever, you start wording them so that you know that they're going to bring in a certain audience, or so that they're going to get recognized by a search engine. And all those things are important, but you still have to do it in the context of what your mission is. And if you're only focused on money, you start losing focus of that mission.
I think that's really important, and it's to say throughout this journey, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to lapse back into old behaviors.
Sure.
And not to self-flagellate too much and think, what am I doing? I can't believe I'm doing this again. And I can say, even on LinkedIn, for example, I put a post on there and it started to trend, and I had a lot of people commenting and liking it. And I felt the ego just building in me, and I started to feel like, oh my gosh, I love this. All these people talking about my post. Yeah. And it started to influence what I was posting. I'd look for the perfect hashtag, the perfect way to craft it. And, and what happened is, I didn't get that same egoistic satisfaction. And then I thought, what am I doing? Like, ultimately, I want to be putting these posts on there so that I have something to look back on and go, oh yeah, there's a key learning for myself when I forget. So it's just realizing that, I think, is that, the ego is going to manifest throughout your journey, and you don't beat yourself up. It's normal. But yeah, just be aware of it, I think. So that's a really good thing.
Well, another thing I did, since we're so kind of on the topic of money too, is part of the reason I when I set up the expectation gaps, I did it with keeping my ego in check in mind. So, because of course I had delusions of grandeur and whatever, it might happen someday, we'll see. But I had in my head, I'm like, okay, so say I make tons of money from this, what am I going to do with that money? And so part of the reason I set it up as a nonprofit organization is so that I can only draw a salary from it. And my salary has to be approved by the board. I do have a board of directors. It has to be approved by the board, and it has to be reasonable compared to what I'm an executive director, so what other executive directors would make. So I have that control on myself. So my ego does not get in the way, and the money doesn't get in the way. Me chasing money does not get in the way of my mission, because there's already a built-in control for it. So I think maybe that's another piece for people. They wouldn't set up the same control, obviously, but I think in any situation, you can set up some kind of control on yourself to keep your ego in check, and to know when your ego is starting to take over, just like you did. All of a sudden something clicked and you said, oh wait, this is my ego talking, I need to shut him up for a minute. But that's part of the journey too, because your ego is going to take a lot of hits when you're starting something new. Well, assuming that in the process of settling, or in the process of not settling, you're starting something new, which you probably are. I would imagine that you would be. your ego's going to take a lot of hits along the way. But then you're going to get these little moments of like, where you're going to have a big spike one day where things are just going your way, but you can't get too lost in that moment because it's just a flash in time. The next day you can be down at the bottom again. For whatever you're trying to accomplish, all of a sudden, something happens and you're back to square one again. And so, yeah, like I say, just to have, and I don't know exactly how that would work, but it's just a thought of putting some kind of control in place for yourself.
I love that. See, like this is really good for me too, because I think it's putting a safeguard in place, like an ego safeguard,
right,
to stop it from basically getting to the point where it comes into play, and then you have to realize after the fact.
Yep.
Because what's the damage that's being done in between it happening and then you realizing, if you can have that safeguard like you did, and I really like that.
Yeah.
It'll avoid that from happening.
Yep, absolutely.
So I guess if with all the learnings that you've had now, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, which is always, I think an interesting exercise, what would you say? What's a core thing that you would say to young Amanda, I suppose?
Sure.
Not saying you're not young now, but younger Amanda.
Yeah, hey, I've already kind of given away my age by these timelines. So, all right. So, young Amanda, it's a slippery slope because I don't think I would tell her anything for two reasons. First of all, young Amanda would not have listened to me because young Amanda thought that she knew everything and was pretty self-righteous a lot of times, pretty egotistical. And most of the time she was right because, like I said, up until the point that my marriage fell apart, I pretty much did get everything that I worked for, everything I wanted. I've always been kind of a high achiever, and a lot of things have just come easily for me up until that point. So that was another thing that really knocked me back. So, like I said, young Amanda wouldn't have listened, first of all. But even so, I don't know how much I would tell her because I really would not change anything I've done to this point. Of course, I have like silly regrets, like you think about, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said this to that person, or little things that maybe you think you could take back a conversation or something. But big regrets, like I don't have any big regrets because every single thing that happened for a reason, and every single thing made me stronger and put me in the place I am today. So I'd be careful what to tell her because I wouldn't want to change anything. So, but the one thing I think that, with that being said, the thing I think would be good for her to know is that or for everyone to realize is you're just not that important. And I know that sounds horrible, or it sounds really bad, and it sounds self-defeating, but it's really not if you take it for the way I mean it, in that we're just here for a flash of time. I mean, when you think about it, and we are one of how many billion? I don't even know, 7 billion, some people.
I think it's up to that now.
I don't know. When you really start thinking about these things, you're really insignificant. And that doesn't mean that you can't do significant things, but it helps you take some pressure off yourself. Like I used to always feel so responsible for myself, but also responsible for everyone around me. As I already said a little bit about my ex-husband, but also at work, I felt like I was responsible for anybody who was working, like someone who was reporting to me. I felt completely responsible for their work. I felt completely responsible for my clients. And if my clients were supposed to do something, I was on top of them, like almost babysitting them, like make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I took on all these responsibilities of all these people because apparently I thought that was my job, but also because I thought I was just that important. And then I realized other people can actually function without me, believe it or not. And that it might make some people feel bad, but it actually was when I realized that finally, that I'm not that important, it really freed me up. It was really liberating in a way because I don't have that pressure of, like we talked about, trying to make other people's lives easier or try to make them happy. I know they're going to be fine without me. And some people hate to think that, they want to feel needed, and be needed is great and all, but when you realize that you're really not that needed, it just opens you up to take care of yourself, I think, too. And then you start to realize, like I said in the beginning, as you take care of yourself, everything around you becomes better. And your relationships with people become better. The people around you become better because they look at you and they see how well you're doing, or how well you're feeling, how well you're taking care of yourself, and they start doing similar things. So I guess that's what I would tell her, is just that, because I do kind of wish, although it would have changed a lot of things, but I do kind of wish I would have realized that a little sooner. It would have taken a lot of pressure off myself. A lot of sleepless nights and
I think that's a really good point, and I think it's not a bad thing. It can, on the face of it, if you do think you're that important, for somebody to say you're not that important, especially yourself, can be a bit confronting. And as you said, your ego takes a hit and it goes, well, hold on, all these clients, all these staff that I have, but what it actually does in return is gives you so much more, because you go, oh, well, all that pressure's gone. That pressure that I was putting on myself, thinking I'm so important to this. It's like, no, I'm actually just a small microcosm in the big scheme of things.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of things to be gained from, basically saying I'm just a small cog, really.
Yeah. Well, and it frees up your mind. I guess that's a lot of theme of what I'm talking about here, is it frees up your mind then to be your best self and to really show up for those people. And now you are actually more important to them because you're actually showing up for them the way that you should be showing up for them. So it's weird how that works. Like, as soon as you realize you're not important, you actually become more important.
It's very philosophical and it's hard to fathom, but when you get there, it's really good.
Yeah.
So you've talked a bit about, the support you've had around you throughout this journey. Can you just tell us, just briefly a bit about some of those really important people in your life and how they've supported you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my number one, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to leave my parents out. I mean, my parents have been very supportive. They were there for me when I was going through my divorce and everything, 100%. And my brother was there for me. So I had my family, but I think the one person who helped me the most, because we can relate to each other easier, is my best friend. So I'm fortunate enough to have someone who we've been friends for, again, here I'm dating myself, but we've been friends for over 20, I want to say about 24 years probably. And so she was huge. And so it's so important for people to build, as I alluded to before, is to build good relationships with people who have the same values as you and not have these superficial relationships. And I know some people are more extroverted, and so they need to be around a lot of people all the time, and that's different. I'm not that way. And for a long time, I would actually try, like, I felt like I needed to have more friends. And then one day it just dawned on me that I have a lot of acquaintances. I don't have a lot of people that I actually call my friend, but the ones that I do are there for me. So I had my best friend, and I did two other friends who, when things really hit the fan, they were there. I mean, my best friend was there whenever I needed her. My other two friends took turns spending Sundays with me because Sundays was the day I didn't have my daughter. And so they took turns spending Sundays with me. And my work was huge because I actually, at the time, I took a couple weeks off of work because I was a mess. And they actually kept calling me and checking on me and not forcing me is not the right word, but pushing me to come back. And okay, just come in and give it a try. Give this a try. And so people at work were huge. And I'm just trying to think of who else. But I mean, I'm very lucky that I've had a lot of good support. But part of it's luck. Part of it's intentional because, like I said, I've always focused on surrounding myself with people who I guess I know are going to be there for me when I need them. And it's a little contradictory because I talked about ex-husband, and maybe you would think he hasn't been there for me, and maybe I didn't make a very good intentional choice there, but everybody else, I've narrowed the people down, and the people I spend my time with are the people I know are going to be there for me when I need them. So I've always had a lot of support, and I've even had support from my ex-husband when through that time period there was some support from him. But then as time has gone on and we've been able to rebuild a relationship again, he's a huge support for me now. He's a board member on the Expectation Gaps. He's written stuff for the Expectation Gaps. And so even people that maybe the relationship fell apart, there's something about that relationship that kept you in it, and you might be able to build off of that. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it does.
To help your support. For people to offer you support, because everyone's going to offer you support in a different way too. Like there's different, depending on what kind of support I need, I go to a different person. And luckily I have, but again, that takes intention to sit down and think about who are the people. Like, okay, if I break up with someone, who am I going to go to talk about that? If I have a crappy day at work, who am I going to go to talk to about that? If my kid gets hurt, who am I going to talk to about that? All these, there's people that you should have in mind that you would want to talk to, and you shouldn't just talk to the first person that's available, because that might not be the one who's right to talk to in that particular situation.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's probably one of the first things that I read on the Expectations Gap was about having those people. And it made me actually look for a moment and go, do I have, because there's some roles that Amanda talks about, which is, the devil's advocate. I think the main reason I think about that one is because I was like, I don't have a devil's advocate. I was like, where's my devil's advocate? And I think at the time I was like stressing about it, and Amanda said, I'll be your devil's advocate. I'm like, oh, thanks. Cool. All right. But, it's just, it is having those people, because I know that if I want to have a pity party, I'll go to my mum. If I want to, have a really logical conversation that will take me where I need to, I'll go to my dad, because he's not about the pity party. He will bring me in line. So it is important to go, well, do I have all the right people? But that being said, if you don't, it's not something to get stressed about. You just need to think, okay, where can I find that? Whether it is in people that you immediately have around you, a work colleague, or whether it's just in the various podcasts and mentors that you can find.
No, that's a great point.
Could be us even.
That's a great point.
It's important to have that social support.
Yeah, well, and that I should mention too, as far as support goes, in starting the Expectation Gaps, I had a lot of support from people in that they were cheering me on. But nobody in my direct circle, or nobody I know, has ever done anything like that. They don't even hardly know what, the first I was calling it a blog. They didn't even know what a blog was. They have no concept of what's actually available on the internet, or what the possibilities are. And so for that, I had to go to the internet, and I had to, I love YouTube, so I was on YouTube a lot, or books even too. I mean, reading books. I had to learn from people who had been through the transformation I was trying to go through, because nobody in my direct circle had done that. So yeah, absolutely, you can get support remotely, I guess, or however you want to say that as well. It doesn't have to be someone that you're face to face with or actually even know.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose in summary, what's next for you? So, you've gone through this big journey, but what do you think's next for you?
Well, I don't know, other than, and that's a tough question, because in the spirit of not settling, I keep my options pretty open. For example, I wasn't planning on doing this show with you, whatever it turns into, but you threw out the invitation to me. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast? Yeah, I've kind of thought about it, so I said, yes, let's go for it. And so I think it's important too, because as you're changing, as you're not settling, there's going to be opportunities that come up that you never would have imagined would come up. You can't plan for them. So you have to be somewhat flexible to try different things. and see if it fits and see if that is going to get you to where you want to be and if that's going to help you live the meaningful life that you want to live. So I don't plan too far ahead on things, but I plan to keep growing the expectation gaps. And I'm actually developing, one new thing I'm doing there is I'm developing some like 7-day courses. And so I'm working on that. So that's something different I haven't done before. And then of course, this show with you is something new, and who knows where the heck this is going to go. And beyond that, that's really it. Other than that, I just keep, in my personal life, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because all things are going well there. So really the only place I feel like I need to make changes or keep making changes is in my professional life here. So
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good part to end on, just before we go to the 3 non-optional questions
right.
I've got for Amanda, is that just keep yourself open. And I think one of my mentors, Roxy Nafusi, talks a lot about manifesting. And
Okay.
I've got a very basic understanding of manifesting, but it's just this idea of just basically opening yourself up to
That's
the
right.
universe and just basically bringing into being what you want. And it's basically, you know, if you've got that really good mentality of I'm going to be open, but I'm going to work hard for it too. I'm not just going to expect
100%.
the next amazing thing to drop on my lap. Then, you know, those opportunities will come.
Right.
So I like that. I like that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll throw over to some non-optional questions. And the first one I know the answer to. But tell us about your favorite band and why you love them so much.
All right, so I like to talk about this, but I won't talk about it too long. So my favorite band is Alice in Chains. I've been listening to them since, I don't know, I was 14, 15 years old. And my favorite musician is within Alice in Chains, and that's Jerry Cantrell. And the reason that I love them, and especially him, is just because they're very authentic. Well, I like that kind of music anyway. However, they're just a very authentic band. Their music, the way the music sounds, the way the lyrics are, you can just feel they're just pouring their heart and soul out. And my core value is authenticity, so I'm automatically drawn to that. But not only that, I like that they don't take themselves too seriously because their music's very serious. But they make goofy videos. They goof around with each other. They've done a lot of goofy things over the years. And I am very much like that too, where I'm a complete goofball, yet I am completely serious. Like, I have both of those things going on in my head all the time. So I can relate to that.
I love it. Good choice. Tell us about a book that's changed your life.
There have been a lot of them, but the one that sticks out in my mind it's called Unf, but it's, you know, the full word, which I won't say in case we want this to be kid appropriate. Unf yourself. And I think the subtitle is Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life, I believe, but it's by Gary John Bishop. And there's a lot of great lessons in there, but the one that sticks with me and kind of his overall theme is that you have the life you're willing to accept. And so that goes along with our theme here a lot too. But another great passage from that is, it goes something like, I accept everything. Oh, now I'm not going to get it.
It's always the way when you're on the spot.
Well, I know, and I'm trying to remember. I knew I had something with expect. I expect nothing and accept everything. And that's huge. Like, that statement, even though I just couldn't come up with it, that statement stuck with me and really changed my perspective on a lot of things.
I really love that. That's really good. So make sure to post the title of that book as well when you submit the video. Because,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we can blank out the inappropriate word in the title.
Well, on the book cover, they use an asterisk for the
Q. Cool. Yeah.
But yes.
I love it. And final question. So if you could meet anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, that's an easy one. And I already answered that one, because it would definitely be Jerry Cantrell. Because not even, and I actually did meet him once, but I only met him long enough to get a picture taken with him, and then he was gone. So, I mean, I didn't talk to him, and I could even barely even speak when I went up to him. But at any rate, the reason that I would want to meet him, though, is because I really would like to tell him thank you, because he has had a huge impact on my life, and I appreciate everything he's given to me and all his fans. And so, yeah, that's why I would like to meet him, so I could say thank you.
I love it. What a great way to end. So thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing our story and being so open and honest with everyone.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And the core thing I think off the back of that is I hope everyone can see that this is a story of where somebody, and it's taken time and a lot of effort and challenge, has not settled, has realized they've settled and then decided, no, I'm going to take that leap of faith and try and find something different. So next week, we will turn the tables and that'll be interesting. And I will share my story, which is probably a bit more recent and is still very much in transit at the moment, I think. I can't say the word. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us. It's just tricky. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and we will catch you next week.